3 people have reportedly been killed by security forces across Syria on Wednesday. Bashar Al-Assad has spoken to supporters in Damascus now for the second time in the last 24 hours, reiterating his dismissal of calls to step down. He's blaming the 10-month-long unrest in the country on foreign-funded terrorists, promising to crush them with extreme prejudice. The UN says Damascus has stepped up its crackdown on protesters, but Assad claims no order was ever given to fire on civilians. The president's pledged commitment to democratic reform, promising a referendum on a new constitution by March and free elections soon after. Let's get more on these developments with independent news editor James Corbett coming on the program with us here on RT. Good to see you. So Assad spoke yesterday for the first time now since June, and then just again 24 hours later he's sounding off. Why so much talk now? Is it a sign of desperation or possibly just a new tactic?
Well, I'm not sure about desperation so much as something of necessity for him at this point to make sure that that people don't start spreading rumors about him fleeing the country and other such things that we've seen spread, for example, about Mubarak in Egypt last year or about Gaddafi in Libya. These types of rumors start to spread as a government becomes more embattled and more slandered, really, in the international media in a lot of ways. And I find it interesting that pretty much every single English language report of his recent speech in Damascus uses and stresses the word conspiracy, that he used the word conspiracy to describe what's happening in Syria and against the Syrian government right now. And it may be a matter of semantics, but unfortunately in the English language, really, conspiracy has become a term that for some reason means paranoid conspiracy fantasy, when in fact it's actually a criminal offense that's prosecuted in jurisdictions around the world each and every single day. But it's important to understand that when he speaks of this conspiracy that he's going to strike down and these foreign terrorists who are invading his country, that this is in fact not something that's open to debate. It was actually revealed in documents that were leaked from the U.S. State Department last April that proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that the U.S. State Department has pumped in at least $6 million secretly and covertly into Syrian opposition groups since 2006. So when he talks about a conspiracy to overthrow his government, I mean, it did come out in actual documents last year.
As you say then, the U.S. State Department has been involved funneling money into this uprising ongoing in Syria. But President Assad has denied that there is a crackdown on peaceful protesters. What are we supposed to make of the figures the UN is giving? More than 5,000 civilians killed in the country since March. Do you take those as being truthful? Are they exaggerated? What's your stance?
Well, at this point, they're not worth the paper they're not written on, because they have absolutely no basis that, as far as any of us can tell, they've just been handed down from on high, seemingly from the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, so-called, which is really one of the only organizations that all of the reporting about Syria and the opposition's movements and activities is coming from these days. When, again, speaking of conspiracy, people conspiring behind closed doors, just yesterday, I believe, one of the representatives of the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights was seen coming out of a personal meeting with the British Foreign Ministry. So once again, we have people conspiring at high levels behind the backs of the public, and then coming out with these numbers that come out of nowhere from, as far as anyone can tell, 5,000, this magical number we've been hearing for so long. And if some of the recent reports from today and yesterday are any indication, I think that number is about to roll over to 6,000. Again, who knows where these numbers are coming from or how they're being verified, but that's not the type of thing that people usually ask in the build-up for warlike action, exactly as we saw in Libya last year, when numbers were again thrown around without any basis, and months later were shown to have had absolutely no basis.
It's these numbers, though, that are given to the big news networks around the world, that then go again with these big stories, you know, as it was, as you mentioned, with Libya, the whole UN movement for a UN resolution 1973 as a humanitarian mission. James, if I may just move on for a moment here, there's just over a week now to go until the Arab League Observer Mission expires in Syria. Do you think its findings are going to have any effect on the course of this crisis? And perhaps will the findings do anything to deter what might be regional agendas at play?
Well, I think it's interesting to see how there has been apparently one member of that observer mission who has now defected from the mission and said that that the Syrian government is lying to the mission and basically accusing the government of committing the atrocities that the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights and others have been accusing it of for a long time now, and a lot of the media, in fact, that's the number one headline today when you search for Syria, is that this one observer has defected and is calling out the regime, when there's 165 observers in this mission, and the others don't seem to have the same grievances that this one does. But of course, it becomes international news because this is the agenda. So exactly as I said here on RT just a few weeks ago, the Arab League mission there is pretty much preordained. No matter what the mission itself comes out with, if there's even one dissenting voice, the one dissenting voice will be given all of the media attention. So it's a question of which way the powers that be have decided this is going to go, and unfortunately, it looks like it's going to stack up in favor of military intervention once again. But on a different note, the Chinese premier Wen Jiabao is going to be in Saudi Arabia next week, meeting with the Saudis, the UAE, and Qatar to discuss this situation. And the vice foreign minister of China has just come out to say that China expects Syria and all of the region's sovereign territorial jurisdiction be maintained. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out.
China,
and see if
China's getting involved. It's casting its opinion over this as well. In a moment, I want to talk to you about Turkey that is gearing up its forces as we speak. But in that in just a moment, we have here that the Syrian opposition has rejected Assad's latest address. That's two televised speeches in 24 hours, saying that the revolution will continue. Does the signal? Do you think the signal, excuse me, is that more violence is ahead?
I think that's the inevitable conclusion. I don't think this is going to stop anytime soon, and it's difficult to imagine any kind of conclusion to this in the immediate future, especially as the opposition. I haven't seen any indication that there's any sort of way in which this will play out other than the removal of Assad. So until that happens, I'm sure that the violence will continue to escalate.
All right, and very briefly here, we are running rather low on time. As I mentioned a moment ago, Syria's neighbour Turkey calling for an intervention. It's put its forces on a high alert. But Ankara used to be an ally of Damascus. What happened to the friendship? And are we looking at a build-up here of external influence and possible intervention?
I think that's absolutely the case. And Turkey, I think, is probably reading the tea leaves at this point and seeing that the winds are definitely not blowing in Damascus's favor. So it's in their favor and in their interests to be currying the opposition. And on that note, we know that that the opposition has been using southeast Turkey for a number of months now to stage the Free Syrian Army and train opposition activists. So we know that Turkey has been deeply involved in this for some time now. And I think certainly whatever relationship might have once existed between Ankara and Damascus has certainly been severed by this point.
All right, James Corbett of the independent news website, corbettreport.com. Thank you, Ian.